Kim Moody, and I'm your host for In the Mood with Kim GC Moody podcast. This podcast will discuss, educate, and have some lively debate and discussion on tax policy, taxation issues, leadership topics, economics, and the odd political comment as it relates to all of those previous topics, all in a fun and playful style. Come along for the ride. Good morning. My name is Kim Moody. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing great.
Good. For those that are new listeners, my name is Kim Moody. I'm your host for In the Mood with Kim GC Moody podcast, and I've got a great guest today, Paul Tompkins, who's and for those that are listening, you already heard his voice. For those that are watching, you can see him on the screen here. Because Paul, we've got both options, the video and the audio. So Paul, you're in Toronto. I'm in Calgary. What's new in Toronto these days? Is it we're recording this on December the 13th. I can tell you here in Calgary, it's a little chilly, but nicer than normal. So how about in Toronto? I hear that the end of the world with some snowstorms and what have you.
No, no, it's actually been a somewhat mild fall, and it was mild 2 days ago. It got a little chilly yesterday, but that's what it should be. It should be chilly, and hopefully we'll have some snow before Christmas, but there's no promises there, so we'll wait and see. But it's all good.
Well, I'm excited as hell to have you as a guest today. I've been trying to introduce some distinguished guests to my podcast rather than just listening to me drone on about tax and all that's going on, and the bad stuff and some good stuff. And I had Jack Mintz on as one of my first interviewees. So pretty distinguished fellow, as you know, and we got you, another distinguished fellow, Paul. And so, the purpose of today is just to introduce you to the people that don't know you. I know you're a pretty well-known person in your field, and for those that are listening in your field, no introduction probably needed. But Paul, why don't we just talk about who you are? Like, what's your background? And I know you went to law school and became a lawyer, and apparently that wasn't good enough. You had to do more. So maybe talk about your history, your background, your career, and just who are you?
Great. Well, thank you, Kim, and it's great to be on. I was expecting. I don't have the colorful glasses, so I was not even going to try and outdo you. So uh, my my firm, for those who don't know, it's Tompkins Insurance, and it is a very focused high level boutique life insurance advisory firm. But sort of the quick where I came from, actually, originally from Calgary, but grew up in
Come
Vancouver.
on.
Was
Born in Calgary, are you?
born
But
in
you're in
Calgary.
Toronto.
Yeah, and then grew up in Vancouver, and yes, I did the business degree there, then went and did a law degree out at Queens, and then back to Vancouver, and decided that law wasn't for me. So I ended up moving to Toronto back in 1987, and I thought I would go into investment banking, but for anyone who knows, 1987 was a really dumb year to do that.
Isn't that the year they made Wall Street, the movie
Yeah,
Wall Street?
yes,
Or about that year, I mean.
yeah, that's about it. Yeah, and so look, by background, my father was a London life agent, and so I knew about life insurance, and I kind of had this epiphany here in Toronto where as I decided, so what am I going to do? That everybody sells, and I thought that combination of my law background and understanding what life insurance was would be a good one, but I thought I'd want to come at it a little differently. So I started Tompkins Insurance in 1990 here in Toronto, and it I didn't know anybody. That's the problem. But anyways, here 30 coming up on 35 years later, we have developed a very well-known, well-recognized life insurance advisory firm, and we are fortunate to have clients who are among the most preeminent families in Canada and deal with families coast to coast. And we work closely with their family offices and their external advisors. So that's kind of, there's a group of 15 here, and that's all we do is life insurance.
Well, we're gonna we're going to unpack that a little bit more because you've got a hell of a
Yeah.
story to tell about Tompkins Insurance, in my view. But let's so you grew up in, sorry, you were born in Calgary, grew up in Vancouver, kind of danced around Toronto and Vancouver again, and settled in Toronto. So I guess the obvious question, Paul, is Canucks, Flames, or Leafs? And you better answer right.
Yeah. Whatever I answer there, I'm gonna perturb someone. But when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So yeah, I'm a Leaf fan, but that just means that I'm just part of the tortured group that watches and gets disappointed. So yes.
Can you imagine if the Leafs won the cup? Oh my God, it would go crazy.
Well,
But
I've been here for when the Jays won twice. I was here with the Raptors, and I kept thinking I was at downtown for the Raptors. And I go, this would be 10x if the Leafs do it. So,
you're, I think you're right.
yeah.
So let's dive into a little bit more about Paul, the community person, and I understand you like beer, and you got a story to tell about that. So maybe just describe that a little bit.
Yeah. So aside from doing what I do, I decided to take on essentially a personalized private equity adventure, which is Last Spike Brewery, which is actually based in Calgary. And I think Kim,
Fine.
you've gone come by the brewery. It
Yeah,
is actually Alberta's third largest brewery, and we do contract brewing for about 30 brewers in Alberta. And then we launched our own beer, which is called Bronc Beer, very Western oriented. And it's in Alberta, Saskatchewan, also in the Yukon. And so I've got about 30 people who work for me there, and a great team that manages it and works really hard. And so it brings me out to Calgary on a regular basis. And in particular in the winter, I like that because I can then whip up and go skiing at Banff, which I truly enjoy.
I quite enjoy the Last Spike story. Number one, it's right down the street from one of Alberta's, frankly, Canada's first microbreweries, which was Big Rock Brewery, which I think you're bigger than them now, if I'm not mistaken. But
Well, no, they're still theoretically bigger in terms of
are
volume.
they?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, they are.
But
So that's why we're the third.
well, I just love entrepreneurial success stories, which is one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you because you built, you know, the preeminent insurance firm for sure, and also you went into brewing.
Yeah.
I love those stories. So
Totally opposite.
um,
Yeah.
I was in, just as a quick aside, I was in the liquor store the other day, and I had to go grab something, and there is a great big pile of Bronc beer. And I thought, geez, good on Paul. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to chatting with him about that. So looks like
Yeah.
it's a pretty good seller, at least in that liquor store. So in any
Yeah.
event, so good on you. So tell me, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit already. Your father was in insurance with London Life, but what, after um, law school and you're thinking about investment banking and, what kind of drew you back to insurance? Why, uh, what's the attraction there? What was the magnet?
Well, look, there was a degree of, I've got to make a pivot. I've got to do something. I actually do like sales. I mean, I kind of knew it was in my genes, so to speak. And so selling, but I particularly like advising. So giving, advice and counsel. And I thought there was, given the background and this, what life insurance was, that how it would work, works really well for the high net worth. So the reality is I started my business the opposite of way most people are supposed to do insurance, which is you're supposed to go out and sell your family and friends. But I didn't have a lot of family here in Toronto, and my friends were the ones I went to law school with, and they're broke, so that's no good. And so um, I actually, thought this would fit within the high net worth community. So I really started to market to very high net worth families. And the reality is I've seen over the last 30 plus year, and it turns out 1990 was that really just the start of where life insurance was going to be utilized in that high net worth space. So you would know that, there's a lot of, first off, capital gains only comes in the early 70s. And,
Yeah,
but you think 1990, the growth of, in particular, private businesses, and again, you can look at the stock market, has just been a super uh, growth time zone. And of course, that means that capital gains, is starting to fill up. Estate freezes were really just getting going. Um, and so I understood all that. I understood where life insurance would fit. And so the acceptance of life insurance, I mean, it wasn't immediate by any stretch of the imagination. I'd say it really started to take hold a lot more in around the end of the 90s into the early 2000s. And as other methods to deal with, different strategies, they keep getting closed down with different things that could be done. And so you have this explosive growth, you have freezes, you have rollouts that are happening to next generation. And so the life insurance is a great tool. And I use the term, it really is the foundation of that liquidity. So it's got a perfect matching because of its instant liquidity on death, which connects to deemed disposition on death. That's when, we talk about estate taxes in Canada. We don't have estate taxes, as you
right.
know. What we
Yeah,
have is deemed disposition on capital gains. It's unlike the United States, so, we use the term estate tax, but it really is all about that deemed disposition. And so life
right.
insurance matches.
Let me just before we dive into the clever uses, I, I'd be interested in your perspective on this because when I first started off in tax and accounting, as a youngster back in the early 90s as well, late 80s, early 90s, life insurance was kind of a bad phrase. I mean, it's kind of ingrained in you, um, certainly in many of the professions, and I'll speak for myself, accounting, life insurance is, I won't go as far as saying it's a scam, but I mean, certainly there's a lot of pervasive attitudes in the professions, and frankly, I'm going to guess the population as a whole, that life insurance salesman, life insurance as a tool, it's just a scam. I guess I did say it. Um, it took me a while to realize that okay, hold on a second here. You know, let's blow through this smoke and let's recognize what this is. And I got to say, Paul, it was probably 5, 7, 8, 9 years into my career where I realized, holy cow, this is a lot more fluid and a lot more useful and a lot more complex, and certainly has a place in proper planning. I gotta it, and so I quickly ramped up my knowledge I recognize this. Did you find those same pervasive attitudes or roadblocks in terms of getting through to your target audience? Because I certainly did, but today it's I'm much more experienced about it. How about you?
So, look, life insurance has been around for,
Ever?
150 years. And it's been around a
Yeah,
long time. And, that reputational concept of the life insurance salesperson, you know, I mean, all you gotta do is think of Groundhog Day or whatever it might be, that scene there where
yeah, that
Nate,
great movie.
um, and the reality is, so, I know that, my father was a lifelong agent, like in that sort of, that's in the 60s and early 70s. I mean, people would, sort of steer away from that.
Yeah,
And so the way I've always tried to do it is like, advise and educate and show why it makes sense. And I've been paid a great compliment that, by a well-known lawyer. So I love it because you don't sell. And I was going, okay, well, that's great. In other words, it's advise, educate, try, and insurance can also be, it's got a lot of smoke. Smoke just kind of rises up from the table because I don't understand it. It's not the same as my investment funds. It's opaque at times because you're kind of going, well,
Hmm.
what's in behind it? And so the role of a really good advisor is to educate and to simplify. So a lot of people in my industry sometimes will make it more complex. We have to simplify. We have to get
Yeah.
to the core. So we spend a lot of time in what we do to kind of tell that story, educate, and and show why it makes sense. And then a lot of time, I mean, I've seen when the lights go off, in particular for a lot of some of the very high net worth families I work with, it was the first time they used it, and they went, after sort of going through that process, they went, well, why wouldn't we use this? Why doesn't everyone use it? So that's when the light goes on. But that means that you can't be just pushing and just trying to sell at all costs. You got to have serious patience in this business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know so reputation, knowledge, and trust is something that I knew was key, and it takes a long time to earn all of those.
You're damn right on that. Yeah. I think you hit on reputation, knowledge, and trust. I love that. And then simplify. I mean, in my
Mhm.
business, tax, I don't think there's too many more things more complex than tax. But certainly when I first started looking at insurance, it was, and it still is to me, complex. So I think you're bang on. If you can make it real, bring it down to plain English, as best as possible, that's a real skill and a real talent. So good on you for that. So, so let's move on to, you know, in my practice, Paul, insurance plays a really foundational and fundamental role in many estate plans and many just overall plans for high net worth, ultra high net worth families. Maybe, and I know for you as well, can you just describe from your perspective how it does play a role? Like, is it one of, given all the tax changes, and we're going to talk about capital gains here shortly, but given all the tax changes that we've seen over the years, is it one of the last best tools out there for families, or where does it fit?
Look, I agree. Life insurance is a great tool. It's got some very unique foundational tax benefits to it. And then by its nature, so that I go back to instant liquidity. So it is a tool that is made to uh, provide funds at the event of death. Now that, is very important, even in I'll call it the family market. That traditional use of insurance is still critical when you have a member of the family who has insurance, they've got kids. That's traditional use. It's foundational and it's important, and it's a time of economic loss, putting aside the emotion. So insurance is important for that. So then you also have with permanent type policies, whether it's universal life or whole life, and we predominantly utilize whole life, has tax exempt growth that allows for the death benefit to grow. It Most of, like 99% of the policies we deal with are corporate owned policies. Um, so they're using holdcos to fund the policies. They own it. The death benefit comes in there. And the key thing is the crediting of capital dividend account. So that death benefit comes in. There's a formula that's in the tax act, but you can assume that at life expectancy, 100% of that death benefit is going to be credited to the capital dividend account. Now, that is just, the key component when you're doing, when people like yourself and the legal people come in, they're doing the postmortem planning. Capital dividend credit is critical. And we know, I know we're going to touch on capital gains inclusion rate.
Yeah.
With the change in inclusion rate, that meant that the other source of capital dividend, which is the piece that's not taxed on the sale of, let's say, stocks and bonds and or sale of business, that got cut from 50% to 1/3. No change on the insurance. So that meant that CDA that's created in insurance is extremely valuable. And so it is, I don't like to say that it's a tax shelter, but it's, sometimes it's analogous to say, you can put funds in there, they grow tax exempt. It's like a corporate TFSA, so to speak, but it isn't. But it's got that, sometimes you got to create imagery for people to understand it. So it goes back to that simplification.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, let's talk about capital gains, Paul. I mean, as we all know, today we're recording this on December the 13th, 2024. And as a quick reminder for listeners and viewers, the April 16th, 2024 federal budget in Canada increased the capital gains inclusion rate to 2/3 effective June the 25th. It's a lot more complicated than that, but just let's keep it at that for simplification purposes. And today, as we're recording this, Paul, we still don't even have a bill before Parliament. And you and I were talking offline before this, and I wrote a piece on this. Who knows where this legislation is going? Will it die before we get an election? Will it get reintroduced, in January? Who knows where this is going? But what impact has that done, or is this having in your business and insurance?
Well, look, it's interesting because for years, you know, as I would walk through with advisors, with family members, with their family office people, we'd always say, well, and there is the potential for the change in the inclusion rate. For those of us who, I told
Yeah.
you I started in the business in 1990, I witnessed the change from 50% to 66 to 75, and then back to 50.
Yeah, me too.
Then, so you did too. And so you always want, well, look, it's there. And then you start to see that you've got, you know, you've got a lot of spending that's going on, and you've got a cash-starved government that's looking for revenue. So yes, they made that change, and it has, I did an article where, sometimes on the accounts would say, well, it's a change of, whatever it was, 8%, on the rate. But I went, yeah, but in terms of the tax liability to clients, it meant like about 35% a jump in your estate taxes. So it's
Yeah,
significant. It's
it is. Yeah.
it's a big number. So what it has meant is that obviously people are saying, well, now I need additional coverage to cover off this tax. As to the legislation, I think, both you and I and many of your viewers will know, really the only reason it hasn't gone to legislation is there is a political gamesmanship going on here with and I don't pretend to be the expert here, that they're supposed to release certain documents unrelated to this. And so there's gamemanship going on in a minority
Yeah.
government.
So politics.
And then but CRA has said, look, everybody's got to go on the basis that this is going to be done. It's not unheard of to have legislation passed based on, implementation at a date in the past. So they're going to run out of days this year, so most likely not this year. But, again, they're cash starved. They need it. The NDP would be on side with this. So does it occur in January? An election is coming, we know.
Yeah.
And I don't have to tell you that there's regime change coming in a nice democratic way. That's my belief. But
That's my belief too. Fingers
yeah,
crossed.
yeah.
But does this? I think you've kind of touched on this already. But does the capital gains inclusion rate, other than just increased coverage because of the extra tax liability, is there a bigger role for it to play, like on the
Well,
investment side, for
you've got
example?
you've
Or
got you've got from postmortem planning, it used to be the 50% solution. Now it'll be the
yeah,
1/3 solution. So
so you got to
that
redo
means
the plans.
so then,
Not redo, but just be aware of it,
but
I guess.
it's just got to be aware of it. And then I come back to the CDA. So that CDA, that capital dividend account credit that the life insurance is going to provide becomes all the more powerful. It it is it is that um, and it's again all the other pieces, but it has made the life insurance an even more valuable tool than it already was. So I can tell you in our, I mean, we are faced um, within certain circumstances, a lack of capacity. I mean, there are families that are dealing with very, very substantial sized um, tax liabilities on deemed disposition. So, we are at many instances, going out and tapping the absolute maximum capacity we can get in the marketplace. And that's first off, underwriting that amount and then navigating, 5, 6 companies and putting it together in the proper way. I mean, we do that. This is, you got to choose wisely who you're going to work on this. You don't want it to be the first time they're doing it. And it is, they're looking at it, they're running the numbers, they're doing the, we'll model out, that postmortem plan. And you can see it is painfully obvious how much more value that the use of insurance has become as a solution. And
Yeah.
look, Kim, there's lots of strategies that get thrown around in our industry. Our motto here is we're progressive but not aggressive, because there are
I
some
like that.
aggressive plans that have been advocated over the last number of years. Um, and um, so
Well, that actually segues nicely, Paul, into my second last question for you, because like your industry, I mean, my industry is filled with, so-called aggressive plans. It's just notoriously over the years, right? Hey,
mhm.
have you seen this? I always, whenever I lecture about it, I talk about the uh, not Bugs Bunny, but Sesame Street. You ever watch Sesame Street as a kid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I can't remember all the episodes.
Well, you remember there was always a guy, and I can never remember his name, and people always tell me, but it would be a little guy that is standing kind of with a trench coat, and he's got a little hat on, and people are walking by him, and he always walks by and says, "Hey, buddy, come here." Yeah. And then he opens up his coat and he says, "You want to buy a letter E?" Yeah, and then it's all about the letter E and blah blah.
Yeah.
I always laughed at that because in my profession, some aggressive tax plans. Hey, buddy, come here. You want to buy an aggressive tax plan? And I always trash that, right? Because a lot of them are prepackaged products, and the government has never been amused with those. And frankly, they've come down with now, as you know, mandatory disclosure rules and things that, to try to really crack down on that. With respect to that example, Paul, what are you seeing in your industry with respect to trends and even things like artificial intelligence or so-called prepackaged plans? Are you seeing similar kind of crackdowns like I am or have over the years?
Well, look, we're aware that so on. I mean, look, CRA invests. I love this term. Invests in
Yeah, me too.
auditors, and and so if so, they're out there auditing. If there's life insurance, I mean, there are to be about a 10 or 12 page list of questions that they are asking for everything. So it's not like, look, they're not dumb. And
Nope.
they're slow, but they're not dumb. And
Yep.
so they are, going to look at these things. Obviously, that as I said, there are plans that are aggressive. There's some that in our industry that are very aggressive. Um, you know, whether it's, use of offshore insurance, use of certain types of shares to shift, shifting value, surplus strips, all these kinds of things are just, you got to watch it. And so,
Yeah.
and life insurance sometimes is, utilized as part of those components. And, um, just, you got to tread carefully. There's no such thing as free insurance. Um, yes, you can do finance insurance. We will utilize finance insurance in the right fact scenario. I mean, uh, as you know, Kim, we're just really pleased to, I've been super pleased over the last year and a bit to have Florence Marino, who
Awesome.
writes Tompkins Insights for us. She is our thought leader, 30 plus year career at heading up the tax and estate planning group at Manulife, is the author of the book. And so we're just so pleased to have her here working with us. And so we've got a great product, if planning is done properly and without being too aggressive, it's going to solve the problems. Um, and that then comes, there are plans that have been implemented, and, you got to look at the advisory firm. Is that advisory firm still the same way it was? Policy reporting is a key thing. Um, you know, you, so are you stuck with an organization that can't continue to report and deal with some plan that's very convoluted? And, I can come back to policy reporting, but again, we'd stay with, we're not immune to, we know what's going on. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to give the pros and cons. It goes back to educating and advising.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I
so.
like your phrase progressive, not aggressive. In other words, you're going to really, from what I know of, Tompkins Insurance, which, a fair amount, is you're wired similarly to me, and certainly our firm is, you're going to be very creative, but you're not going to cross that stupid aggressive line. And because clients need to sleep at night, right? And that's certainly my approach. And I presume that's your approach as well.
It is, Kim, and you touched upon, the reportable transactions. I mean,
Yeah.
who's it reportable by? And, so it can be, it could be the lawyer, it could be the accountant. Is it supposed to be the client? Is it, the insurance person? So, I mean, the GAR as it was and GAR the way it is today, it's a new animal. And
Yeah.
again, it's just to be careful. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, I lied. This is your second last question here. Tell me about uh, what differentiates Tompkins Insurance. I mean, like accounting and like law, there's no shortage of firms out there. What differentiates Tompkins Insurance from competitors or
Oh,
perceived competitors?
well, of course, I have competitors. No one bats 1,000
Yeah, agree.
in any industry, um, and I come back to, reputation, knowledge, and trust are key, um, and we have also, over the last many years, built up the infrastructure of our firm. So, and I think the infrastructure of the advisory firm is going to become a very important thing that the advisors, the people that are in your role, the lawyers and the clients should be saying, tell me about what's in behind your firm. We have we've implemented a long-term succession plan. It's been at the forefront of future-proofing our firm and having, members of the firm who are going to be, working here well beyond myself. So I've got young members of the team. It happens to include my son, but it will be a team approach. So you want to, because life insurance is there for, people are buying life. We're selling life insurance to young family members that, we're projecting out, life expectancy 50, 60 years out. Um, I mentioned policy reporting. We have situations where we have a portfolio of insurance with various companies, and um, all corporate-owned insurance requires some reporting. So we've had to develop customized reporting, um, and we're being proactive on this. You can't just rely on the insurance statement you get because they are that's talk about opaque. And so,
I can relate to
find out about that.
that.
Now, and I come back, you mentioned, the lawyers, accountants, investment advisors. I do mention to people, I mean, no one would change accountants if they're working with you, Kim, or your firm. But
Of course not.
if you want to, you can change your accounting firm from accounting firm A to B. You want to change your
Yeah,
lawyer, no problem, just send the file over. You want to change your investment advisor, transfer my funds over there and you carry on.
yeah,
With life insurance, there's something called an agent of record. It's
yeah.
the agent, so it's AOR, agent of record. It's the agent that sold it. And then you're kind of married to that person. Now, someone else can take over as agent of record, but I can tell you that on our industry, most people don't want to take over to become the new agent of record because you're taking on service and you're really not being remunerated
Eh,
for it. So
yeah,
in that light, it's like just take the time. And I cannot stress this hard enough for the people that are in your role, Kim, or the lawyers or whomever that are saying, okay, you need to go get some insurance. This is not just, a small amount. The size of premiums today, they're in like, there's some serious size premiums. And so, think about it. Let's do some due diligence and talk to people to say, are we on the right horse in the right race? And, hopefully, I think we meet a lot of those criterias, but it's what's the team ask these questions. It's just a normal thing you'd ask. If you were going to have surgery, you wouldn't just go, I'll just, pick whomever. You
right.
do
Yeah,
some due diligence.
absolutely. Well, that's a great description. Thank you, Paul. And so this will be the last question. See if you take the bait. You don't have to, but given our current environment in Canada, um, I've been pretty opinionated over the years. I like to think my opinions are, backed up by more than just opinions, but the tax and economic policy that we've seen from our federal government has been iffy at best. And I guess my question to you is, do you agree that we've had some pretty iffy tax and economic policies that are impacting your clients? And are you optimistic for better results, or sorry, positive change?
You know, change change is always happening, but sometimes pendulums have to swing pretty hard one way or the other. And
Right.
I can't believe you said you're opinionated, but don't worry, I follow you. So, but look, we've had all you gotta do is look south. I mean, like talk about shaking up the neighborhood,
Yeah, no kidding.
and I think we're an incredibly fortunate country. I mean, we live right next to the most powerful economic engine around. And so we are, high probability, nothing's for certain, but a high probability we will have a change in government. But they're going to be hamstrung to a great degree by the fiscal situation. There is, there is a need for revenue. So I think there will be some changes for certain, and I think it will be around how can they make the economy more efficient and grow. But in the meantime, and the conservatives will have certain areas they want to focus on for sure. I get concerned that we're not creating. We should be creating more wealth in this country. We should be creating
I agree.
more um, very prosperous family businesses. The reality is this country, family businesses are great. The ones that really work well, man, they grow, they're community oriented, they want to stay in Canada, and we need to create that environment to encourage more growth and more investment.
Yeah. Uh, well worded without the strong opinions like Kim. But I think you're bang on. So I think I'll leave it at that. I hope the audience got a flavor of number one, how intelligent you are and thoughtful you are, and what kind of business you're growing. and have grown. And in my experience working with you, you're certainly an industry leader, and your firm is as well. And I'll just give kudos to Florence Marino. I've worked with her, directly and indirectly over the years, and man, what a gem!
Yeah,
What a knowledge gem, and just an even better person as well. So, kudos to Tompkins Insurance for having her and on board. And check out Paul, and Paul. Thanks again. Really appreciate all your time and efforts to make Canada a better place. So, thanks very
great.
much.
Thanks, Kim, and all the best of the season to everybody.
Bye now. Well, there you have it. Another episode of In the Mood with Kim GC Moody podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure you like and subscribe and share it with people if you think they'd enjoy it. Until next time, have a great day.